Welcome to Alumni Live, the podcast. These are conversations with Grand Valley State University film and video graduates about the industry, the film video major, and alumni profiles. Hey, so usually we have, a topic where we have a couple people, a panel talking about an issue. But today we're, just kind of curious what's been happening with Chris Gagnon. So Chris, first of all, you're in a place right now that doesn't have a lot of internet. Where are you talking to us from right now?
Hi, Randy. Well, so about 3 years ago, a little bit more than 3 years ago, I was actually making a film for a nonprofit organization in Tanzania. And I was just there for a couple of weeks. And in that time, I was one of the people that I was interviewing and spending time with. I happened to have fallen in love with. And so she said, and she's also from the US, but she was saying, "Oh, I've been working in this organization for a few years now. I'm looking for another job also in East Africa, and I think you should move here."
So you're in
And
East
which
Africa right now.
I'm in, yeah, I'm East Africa, Southern Africa, depending on how you put the country. Also, some people call it Central Africa. Yeah, so I moved to Malawi about 3 years ago. And yeah, it's a great country. It's a really beautiful country. It's super undeveloped, being landlocked. It hasn't had a lot of business that came this way. And when Europe was in Africa colonizing, 150 years ago, and they just didn't have a lot of use for Malawi, so there's just wasn't a lot built here. There wasn't a lot of infrastructure. And so yeah, it's like 93% of the country are farmers. My wife works with farmers, and yeah, I'm here and figuring out what making videos here is like. So yeah, it's been a really nice 3 years. Also difficult for internet reasons, for electricity reasons. Water going out is not always the most fun thing, but
Yeah.
it's overall a lovely place.
All right, so we're gonna dive into all that. Thank you for sharing that, and thanks for making it work and being here throughout, you know, all the issues to get here. So okay, so what you graduated in 2011, right?
Yeah, in December of 2011.
All right. So last I remembered, and one of the reasons I really wanted to talk to you is you had been one of the students that I really liked, watching your films, especially like as we got to the showcases, right? Like you would always put up like really heartfelt, really unique films. And always were one of the people, to watch and say, like, all right, like Chris is gonna have just a cool career. And you really have had just like this incredible journey that like I've had a lot of fun watching on Facebook, and I'm really excited to share with the people viewing today. So after Grand Valley, kind of take us through kind of maybe your senior year into like what launched your career.
Sure. So at my time at Grand Valley, I had an internship with a communications and PR company in Southfield, Michigan. And when I graduated, they offered me a job. And so I worked there for, I guess, maybe 2 years. And that was like a run and gun. Like you wake up, you go to a shoot, you come back, you edit it in the afternoon, and then you post it to their social media account, like either that evening or the next morning. So it was like every day making films. And that was just for, yeah, at the time, this is 2012, 2013. So it was like when a lot of companies were starting to be like, oh, we need to take social media seriously. So it was companies like GM, DTE, Blue Cross Blue Shield Michigan, who were, yeah, trying to get their Facebook pages active, YouTube pages. So but when I think about that time, I really think about, even though I was doing some After Effects in college, like those couple years outside, there's a lot of time spent with After Effects and just like being able to learn. And I had a lot of opportunities to, like, when I needed to look something up, I was on Video Copilot. Yeah, that was a formative time, especially because it created like a really intense pace of work. After a couple years of doing that, I had someone who had actually saw the work I do for fun and was like, "Oh, this guy seems real crazy and interesting, and maybe we could have him edit some of our films." And so that was working in Detroit with a organization called Order and Other, and they were doing all of Shinola's films at the time.
And that's
Um,
the big watch company in Detroit, right?
yeah, exactly. So that was really cool because we were a small team, and we were getting like we were, renting really nice cameras, really nice lenses, and that was like a very different style of production. I remember after that first job where it was like every day turning over a video, that next job, they were telling me, "Slow down. You're going too fast." Like everything just feels maybe like path of least resistance. So like you need to like make the viewer really like pause, turn, think, ask themselves a question. They're always talking about like the mystery box and like just all these like essentially really taking a lot of keys from like documentaries rather than advertising. And so that was a really cool experience. Like I remember, yeah, some of those first edits, like you have a month. Like you need to be here you need to be working on this every day for a month, and we just want to see like an amazing film at the end.
Which
And I
is
didn't
like
really
such
have
whiplash from that first job that you had, right?
I didn't have really a roadmap of what am I gonna do if I needed to edit a video for 30 days. And yeah, there's a lot more footage, there's a lot more to look through, but yeah, I really had to kind of make a roadmap for what does a 30-day edit look like, and there was, massive amounts of footage for some of these, even though they were maybe 5-minute films, and I had a really good time doing that. I mean, the
And
production quality was able to be so much higher, which is
right. Yeah, yeah.
obviously
I saw
amazing.
you with a red camera in one of those shots, which, especially in 2012 was like, that's pretty awesome equipment, like
Yeah,
super cool. And
and
both of those jobs.
we shot
Yeah.
a lot with Alexa, and they were renting like
Oh,
$50,000 lenses, which I had, I was coming from shooting on like a T2i or something like that to having like, the Alexa like, "Oh, you wanna take this home tonight and keep it at your house?" Like, "Yeah, I'll take that home. I'll shoot a couple of things." So that was just like a really interesting I felt like a kid in a candy shop for those couple years working with them.
yeah, a little
Yeah, that's
different
a
than
nice
getting
lens right
review,
there.
huh?
Yeah, exactly.
But when you had been in, school, you were making a lot of fiction stuff, right? So, like, even then coming right out of college, these weren't necessarily the films that you were making as a student, right?
Yeah, and actually the vision when I graduated and even through all of these so I've kind of walked through 4 years now. Through those 4 years, the plan was always I'm saving up money, I'm moving to California. I was also making a lot of films at home for fun. I was trying to get better at VFX. I kinda had this vision that I was going to, write movies, I was going to make them super low budget. I wanted to, like, really have my hands in everything and control everything. And so I actually wrote a couple feature-length scripts in that point, and I was
Oof, that's a
very,
lot of work.
like I felt like I was building up to move to California, and when I had the access to all these, nice cameras and these, having these long time to edit, I was like, "Oh, well, this is great. I'm establishing a reel. I'm going to" like, this is so much more impressive than showing up with, like, these one-day turnaround, you know, PR pieces, advertising pieces that were just like for like a Facebook page. Like these are like beautiful films. So I was like, this is good. I'm gonna move to California. These will help me get a little bit more like credentials because they're these beautiful, like almost documentary style advertisements. But
Yeah, which I
yeah,
mean,
that
I
was
I
still the vision.
yeah, well, I mean, I relate a lot to that story too. I had also, done fiction in college and then had, kind of that same, kind of 4-year period where I was like, all right, I'm going to do some documentaries, like local documentaries, and going to eventually get out to California, right? Like everything's like a stepping stone to do
Mm,
that. But I mean, I personally fell in love with documentary and telling those stories. There was, one particular documentary that like I was just editing the footage that we had done and just like really emotionally connected to it. And I was like, this is a whole different world than what I've been doing. Did you feel some of that love for documentary yourself, or were you still kind of like grinding to get through it, throughout those 4 years?
Definitely. I think like especially with movies like I don't remember exactly when Exit Through the Gift Shop came out, but like there was
Yeah.
a lot of really amazing documentary content that was becoming available in those next couple of years after university that was inspiring. And also when I was working with Order and Other, the the managers there were just like essentially having me watch documentaries constantly and like good ones too. And we would even like sometimes in the office just watch like really interesting documentaries, and that was I guess did change a little bit of my vision. I also started to suspect that I didn't have enough maybe life experience. I was just like, "You know what? I think that maybe when I'm writing these films, they're all a little bit more basic than I would like them to be." And I was like, "I don't know if I have enough life experience to write anything interesting from a fiction standpoint." So I started to think more about, oh, well, maybe when I'm young and I mean, obviously there's amazing people making fiction films from a very young age, but for my own self, I was just like, I'm not mature enough to write something that's actually going to last, like, or like to like still be that I'll still like in a couple years. So I thought, well, documentaries great because you can jump into other people's life experiences. And yeah, I guess I just started to slowly drift into that direction. It's also just a lot easier. I mean, well, obviously documentaries have their own challenges, but in terms of like getting a crew together and like, oh, let's interview this really interesting person and see where it goes. And then, you keep on pulling that thread. It's easy to get started with something like that as opposed to like having, you know, the vision of fiction and then, moving forward on a fiction film, right? It's just it feels like it takes a much bigger effort. I don't know. Are you following what I'm saying?
Yeah, everything's from scratch for sure. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Like, the words are from scratch, the shots are from scratch, even the people in the shots are from scratch, right? Everything is like has to be
Mm.
placed there for sure. But I mean, at the same time, your first like documentary, that I know about was about you and your brother going across the United States on a bicycle. So even so, like your life was still interesting enough to be filming yourself. How did that come to be? Where did that even come from?
So I was living in Ferndale and I was commuting like 10 miles a day on my bicycle to work every day. And my brother was also living in Ferndale working in downtown Detroit. So we were doing that every day, even in the winter. I mean, I think we had the cutoff at like 15 degrees. Like, we can't
Ooh,
run. So we were just racking up a lot of miles. Like, you know what? We could really do something. Like, this is better than just saving gas. Like we were both trying to live, to pay off some student debt at that time. So we're like trying to live as cheap as possible. And so it's like, we could probably do something with all these miles we're accruing. It's like, well, what might we do? And I had the idea of riding across the country. And he was like, okay, yeah. So, I mean, it was just nice that we were both in a time of life where we could figure out a way to take, 6 weeks off work. I think in the end, I asked my boss, I said, I'd really like to ride across the country. And they came back to me and they said, okay, you have 45 days. And I was
wow.
reading all these blogs about it. And it's like, we did it in 90 days, we did it in 80 days, 70 days. And I was just like, 45? So that broke down and it ended up breaking down to almost 100 miles a day. So, yeah, we made a feature-length documentary about it too. So it's like like, while I mean, if you can imagine, like, 110 degrees, like, we're on our 2nd day, it's like, "John, we need to go 95 miles today." And we're at, like, 40 miles. It's so hot, and we're just, like, going straight up the mountains, you leave the ocean, it's almost immediately up in California. And we're dying, and I'm like, "Hey, hold on, let me get the camera out. I need to get some shots." He was just like, "No, I'm not stopping. I'm not stopping." So, yeah, it was sometimes I mean, because also, like, I have this tiny travel tripod, like, it was a bear. And actually, even on the 3rd day, I said, "Let's Google where the closest airport is. Let's tell everyone that it's over." And, like, we failed. And that was something we were seriously considering. Honestly, we were probably saved by the fact that we decided to raise some money for, a charity. So we had, like, people who had donated in, like, $18,000. So it was like, "No, you can't actually just go to the airport and fly home." So, yeah, we just started having to pick up more and more miles, and by the time we got to Kansas, I feel like we had really hit our stride, and we had a number of, days over 100 miles in a row.
Man.
It was brutal, though. There was, like,
Right.
no days off. There was no days off. It was,
What is the title of your documentary?
it's called How to Ride a Bicycle Across the USA.
How to, huh? You're gonna give us some good tips?
Yeah, no, there's a lot of tips in there, because I would really recommend it to anybody who's maybe interested. I would say don't do it in 45 days. Figure out a way to get 2 months off, because there were so many things, so many opportunities, like, where people would invite us into their home and like, "Oh, let me show you around my small town," that we just had to say no to, and it was honestly heartbreaking. I mean, that would have been amazing too for I guess that would have been a different style of documentary. The style we have is very much about it's about the experience of seeing so much of the country in such a short period of time, and it is about the people we met as well. There's some like, in Colorado, being, like, way up in the mountains and meeting a prospector that looks exactly like the guy from Toy Story 2? There's, like, the old prospector, spitting image of that man, and he talked the same way. It was just like, or just meeting characters and people inviting us into their homes, feeding us, like, it was just an amazing way to see the country.
Yeah, so, I mean,
Um,
where did you stay? I mean, so going from West Coast to East Coast, that's a lot of nights. You said 45 days. Where do you stay all those nights? Where do you charge your batteries? Where do you, dump your footage?
yeah, so I brought a lot of at the time, I was still shooting on what did I bring? I brought a T3i, and so I really loaded up on batteries because I knew that charging was being an issue. We did have a solar panel, but that ended up not being fast enough to really charge camera batteries. We would stop at gas stations and because especially in those early days, like going through Nevada, there was times we went 70 miles without seeing anything. I mean, maybe a couple cars would pass, but it would be like 80 just so you know, our maps would tell us, like, just so you know, and for the next 80 miles, you're not gonna see anybody. So it's like an entire day. And, but also, I guess I would say it's like I wasn't filming, like, really long shots that eat up a ton of footage or, eat up a ton of battery, It was like getting out the camera for a big landscape of the desert, and then, we slowly ride by, and
Mhm.
then maybe some riding footage of this and that, and then at the end of the day, maybe just, like, some really short interviews, just like almost like little detail shots. I mean, with shooting every day for 45 days, we did a lot of the main interviews at the end. We'd allot it beforehand, what we were expecting, but we did a lot of the interviews at the end for like, "Okay, day 10, here I'm gonna show you the footage. Tell me my" I was 'cause I went with my brother. "Tell me,
Right.
like, what you were feeling in this," and we were able to kind of, like, pull out a lot of the narrative at the end afterward. And actually, I also because I love After Effects so much, I was able to do a lot of, I think, fun graphics at the end. Like, cause I didn't have, like, a good shot of, like our hands were completely purple,
Oh,
for the whole
no.
ride. So, like, I would, like, do examples or, like, talking about, like, something we learned is how exactly to because we weren't real cyclists. We were, like, just commuter cyclists who, you ride here, you ride there. But it's like, we learned very quickly that, you have to have, like, 33% of your weight on your hands, 33% of your weight on your butt, 33% of your weight on your feet, because if it's out of balance, something's gonna get torn. Whatever you have too much pressure on is gonna get torn up when you're riding for 12 hours a day.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, coast to coast, so 45 days worth of footage. You said you're doing kinda like short shots, but you still ended up with a lot of footage. What was editing
Mm.
like of all of this stuff? Like, how did you pull a story together?
Well, the hardest part was actually, like, editing for my real job, because at the time I was just like I mean, I did some assistant camera stuff, but mostly I was editing from 8 to 6 or 8 to 5 or something like that, and at the end, I would have to come home and start editing the documentary. That was the most difficult part was editing it after a full day of editing and then or on Saturdays and Sundays, but
We do have a viewer question real quick. Suzanne Zach is asking, where can we find your bicycle documentary?
so it was so this is kind of a terrible thing, but it was on YouTube literally like 2 days ago, and I got a notification yesterday that because of we used to dance at all the state signs, that because there was some copyrighted music in there, that they made it unavailable to see. So I'm gonna have to re-upload it. I think I'm gonna put it on Vimeo and see if maybe or I could just take out that little bit of diegetic sound.
Well, and you yourself are a musician, right? Like you're a composer yourself. So do you want to talk about your own music at all?
Yeah, so my relationship with music has been it's especially as I think a lot of people go through this as a musician. Maybe you love it as a teenager, and then in college, you usually have a lot of other people with time on their hands, and you can make things with in a community that's not too difficult to put together. And then when you graduate, and maybe people start having less free time, as they have, either 9 to 5s or they have children or whatever. So I made a lot of music. I was determined to at least make one album every year, but music is such a difficult thing to. I've never had the energy to actually like try to put it out there like, "Oh, listen to my music." But it is something that is extremely therapeutic for me. And actually, so after that job at Order Another, when I went freelancing, ever since then, I don't think I've ever, I've done a lot of editing work since then, and I've just used all my own music. And so I've never really had to license any music. any of the short films that I've produced. Yeah, and that's one of the great things about moving. So I had, my freelance, I was busy. I had a lot of clients. I was working 7 days a week when I was those last couple years in Detroit. And then I moved here and I essentially lost all of those clients, which was a really difficult decision, but I was very certain about my partner, and so when I was moving here, I knew that I was making the right decision, but there was obviously some difficulties there with who am I, if, like, if this is who I am, I've been editing, I've been shooting, videos for, all these people, now I'm here, what am I gonna do? And it really kind of opened me up to music in a new way because when I don't have any work, making music I've been filming myself making music. So instead of doing music video, I'm doing like production videos. And so I've been doing one of those. Well, I guess I've done about 30 this year, which is a pretty intense schedule it's usually on Sunday I will come up with an idea for a song. On Monday, I'll let it just percolate a little bit. Tuesday, I'll pull out the gear. I'm usually recording a lot of the parts. Wednesday, editing. Thursday, editing. And then on Friday and Saturday, I'll show it to a couple friends, see what they think. And Sunday, I post, which has been a really different way to approach music as opposed to like when you're just looking at a music DAW screen, a digital audio workstation, and being like, okay, where do I start? What do I do? Thinking about it, it's like, okay, I'm gonna film everything, I'm gonna record. And so it's been just a different way to approach it. And I'm happy to kind of fuse the two things I love most, music production and video production. With something so kind of not for anybody else except for me, I've really been able to go kind of crazy with animation in those and just doing silly design things, which I think silly is my aesthetic. I love anything that makes me feel like a kid again.
Yeah, well, and I think that's such an important lesson too. I personally have not moved to Malawi, but here we have been, hit by the pandemic. And so,
Mhm.
for me, I had kind of that moment of who am I without work, for 3 months right after, everything got shut down. I'd come right off of doing, some crazy TV shows that just had me working around the clock. And so like digging inside and being like, well, why do I make art? What am I even making art about? Who am I? I think is like, that's pretty important. And, when you're just grinding towards something, it just seems like, the next step is the whole reason to do it, but not necessarily, maybe there's not, that much wisdom in there. So I'm really glad you had that opportunity to learn about yourself. How did you even get to that point where you're moving out to Malawi and dropping those clients? So you came back from riding across the country, you got your purple hands, you got an
Mhm.
$800 footage to cut.
Riding the bicycle across the country, so people had kind of known I was into crazy things, and I had a friend of a friend who was like, "I'm gonna spend a year down in Latin America backpacking, and I'd like to not go alone, like, would you like to come with me?" And I had never met this guy, but I said, "Okay," and that would be 2005, and so that was kind of the beginning.
What got you, like, what happened next?
Well, I got a little bit of a reputation amongst my friends as someone who does crazy things because I had also actually, when I was at Grand Valley, I rode my skateboard across Michigan, which is like 250 miles. And then I had done this trip. I had tried to ride my bicycle across the UP also when I was at Grand Valley, and that failed. So that was my first bicycle tour. I had never even heard of a bicycle tour. I was lamenting the last days of summer and decided I was going to ride across the UP. So there was a couple of these little experiments. And then after the
So this is even before college, you backpacked
Oh,
across.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. 2015.
15,
2015.
okay, gotcha. So this is okay.
So, yeah, so this is after those jobs. I had been freelancing for 6 months, and it was way more I had way more work than I had expected, so I was like, "Oh, actually, I don't have that much responsibility. I don't have my rent is" my lease for the house I was renting was coming to an end, and I said, "Okay, I'm gonna do it." Yeah, I ended up only doing 9 months backpacking around Latin America because my brother got married, and I came home for that.
Wow.
But
This is where
actually,
you
the
into.
guy and I, we flew down to Guatemala, and I think we spent maybe 3 days together, and then I was just like, "I think I'm gonna go do my own thing." He's
Wow.
like, "Yeah, me too."
We're taking a short break to tell you about the Dirk Koning Memorial Film and Video Scholarship. Here's Gretchen Vintage remembering Dirk Koning.
The Koenig Scholarship enables students to get that kind of an education, to be a good filmmaker, to be able to express their voice, and to continue Dirk's dream.
For more information and to donate to the scholarship, visit the link in the description. Now back to the show.
We do have this picture of you in Latin America up on some rocks, right? You're just kind of all alone. Did you see many other people as you were backpacking across Latin America? What was that?
Yeah.
Who did you talk to? Who did you speak any? What do they speak in Latin America?
So yeah, I spoke Spanish. I mean, not like incredibly fluent, but I had enough from speaking like 5 or 6 years between high school and Grand Valley. And yeah, so actually I met a lot of people from Europe, a lot of Australians, a lot of New Zealand people, like speaking of like the people who I was able to like relax and speak English with. And so yeah, I made a number of friends. I had actually ended up spending a lot of time with this guy from New Zealand. And I think we traveled essentially on and off, like we'd meet up in different towns, but we spent a lot of time together between Nicaragua and even all the way down to Colombia.
Yeah.
But yeah, I made a lot of friends. I think it really expanded my worldview in a way that needed to happen. And and honestly, it set me up for my next adventure, which was after that, I had met so many people in Europe. I mean, in pretty much every country. It's like, okay, next thing I'm going to do is ride my bike around Europe. And so I went back, I freelanced for another 8 months or so, maybe a year. And I was saving up
Freelancing
to
here
go
in the
bike.
States? Were you freelancing here in the States?
Yeah,
Or
I came back to Michigan for my brother's wedding, and then I freelanced for about 9 months. Now, unfortunately, this is maybe the craziest thing that's happened to me since university. I had, like, really built out that same bicycle I took across the USA, but I had, like, kinda, like, just made everything better. And so I got on the plane to go to Germany. I was gonna start in Berlin, and I had a layover in Portugal. When I got off the plane, I didn't have my passport. And to this day, I don't know what happened, but
that's
so
not a good thing to
I
lose.
went to the passport control. It was just a layover for like, an hour and a half. And they're like, "Oh, you don't have your passport. That's a crime in this country." I'm like, "Well, it's probably just on the plane. Like it's probably just in the seat back, or it's probably just underneath my butt." I was sleeping when the plane landed. So I was like, they're like, "Oh, well, we're gonna check the plane," but I don't think they did. And the guy who I had at the police station's like, I hate Americans. I hate them so
Oh
much.
no.
And he's like, "It's my lucky day because the American embassy is on holiday today." I don't know why or what. It was some sort of Portuguese holiday. And so he said, "I want to put you in a really nice hotel." He sends me to jail.
Wow.
Oh, it was terrible. And no one spoke English. I had no idea what was happening. I had all these plans for like what I was going to be doing in Berlin. I was ready to go to the theater. I had like really specced out everything I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I was in jail and no one would tell me what was exactly going on. The guy who managed the jail did speak a little English and he came in and he's like, "I've been running this place for 11 years and never has there been an American in here. This is for people they find on the streets who maybe were selling drugs and their visa has expired and they stay in here until I forget exactly what the procedure was. And then they get sent back to their home country after 90 days if XYZ paperwork hasn't been done." So I was in there for a little bit over 2 days, and I was just, like, sleeping on this floor. It was so hot. They were giving us 1 tiny water bottle a day. It was traumatic. It was honestly, it was traumatic. Like, I had some serious, like I still have fear about police in a way that I've never had before, which, I mean, I'm, like, the most privileged person in the world, and it's like but, man, I see a police officer now, I'm like real it was because I just felt so absolutely no control. So they ended up putting me on a plane, not telling me anything. Like they'd taken my belt off so I didn't hang myself, like just all these weird things. They put me on a plane and they sent me back to I just arrived in Boston, had no information what was going on. They'd taken all my things. And when I got to the passport control there, some guy just like appeared out of nowhere and was like, "Here's this guy's things." And they searched it. And I just was like, 1 a.m. in Boston, and it's like, now what? So I got a plane ticket back to Detroit, and I knew that I was gonna be absolutely traumatized, and I was maybe never gonna get on a plane again, so I bought a plane ticket for 2 days later, and I didn't even have a passport.
Oh
So
wow.
then I went to emergency passport control and said, "Hey, I have a plane ticket for 2 days from now, so I need a emergency passport tomorrow," and they provided that, which is I can't believe I did that. What a bold move. And I got on a plane just 2 days later back to Berlin, but they didn't have room for my bicycle, so I bought that. The bicycle you saw in that picture is like an old I mean, it was probably from the early 90s, a women's bicycle that I could find for 50 euro. And the gears broke on the first day. And the whole bicycle trip across Europe was just, it's just like watching something fail very slowly. The gears broke on the first day. Like, no, I mean, Germany, I was trying to learn some German, but like nobody spoke English in the middle of the country at all. So I was like sleeping under or not rocks. I was sleeping under like, pine trees. I was just trying to find, and everyone in Germany, they take the rules very seriously. So I was like pretty, sleeping in some uncomfortable places where I was like, I hope I don't go back to jail.
Right. Are
Yeah.
so in Latin America and in Europe, are you making videos during this, or is this all just for yourself?
In Latin America, I had the intention of making videos. I had pretty much after college, I had always had a camera in my hand or around my neck. And I think in Latin America kind of made me start to be a little bit less so like holding on to every moment and like need to film this, need to film this, need to film this. Because like I ended up somehow my camera got smashed, and then my laptop, someone spilled a rum and coke on my laptop, and like
Oh,
so just like, and then my Kindle broke. Like it was just like all by the end, I felt like I was like a monk. Like I had like it's like I've given up all electronics. But I came back so enthused, and actually the first 5 days I was back, I made I think my favorite music I've ever made. Like that day, I was just like on a mission, and I was like, oh, okay, so I don't always have to be the guy capturing everything all the time. It was really nice to disconnect a little bit. And then when I went to Germany, I had a small camera I brought with me, but then after the police incident, I just like I'm going total zen. You can see in the picture, I just have like a sleeping bag, water bottle, a tiny tent. It was very minimal.
right, right. And it sounds like, you're really, kind of filling yourself up with, like you said, you're disconnecting, you're engaging with people, you're, having these experiences that most people can only like read about or watch movies about. And you said it created, you created some of the best music that you've ever made. What did you like tap into? What did that music sound like? How did this affect your art?
Well, I think everything before that was maybe like a little bit more moody. Not all of it, but when I came back, it really sounds all very colorful. If you can imagine, like going around in like these old, because like the buses they use for public transit there are like old elementary school buses from the United States that are retired, sent down there, and they're like painted crazy colors. They have all these interesting fabrics, and people are coming on the bus with all sorts of animals, and there's music. So I think it was just like, to me, it sounds like a little bit more just like an explosion of color, but I'm not sure if other people would hear it exactly that way. It also, I think, I think I stopped taking myself so seriously.
Oh, yeah?
Um,
Was that your
yeah,
intention when you were taking these trips? And, was it your intention to, get to know yourself more, or is that just the result?
I think I was just looking for. I don't know what I was looking for actually. I think I'd have to think about that. Certainly, I don't know. I don't know. I think it probably shifted a number of times as well. I mean, now I'm living in a country that, where the culture is completely different. And
Right.
I think I think it suits me. The slower pace of life. It's similar in some ways it's similar to Latin America, where things are much more, I perceive them as much more personable. Yeah, I mean, I like living in the mountains. I like we're next to an enormous lake, so it's not Lake Michigan, but it's pretty close. It's also very beautiful. I I've I've have a new community. Like here you can see I joined the basketball team. Yeah, you know what? Actually, I have one thing I'd like to transition to. So I I came back from the Europe trip, and then it was only about a year later that I went to Tanzania and met my partner. So
Why did you go
I
out
met
to
her there.
why did you go out to Tanzania?
One of my clients who was a producer who hired me a lot was just like, "Hey, you've done a lot of paid work for us. We're doing a film about this NGO in Tanzania, and would you edit it for, free?" I said, "Okay, yeah." Like they'd given me so much work, and yeah, I'll occasionally do some free stuff. And so I had edited it, and then I was so impressed with the interview. I was like, "Wow, these people are amazing. I'd like to meet them." Like we're actually going to go back and film an update video in a year. So they invited me to come with them. I was going to shoot some footage. And so I went, and I was there in those last, honestly, it was like 6 days I really talked to Amari. That's my partner's name. Before I decided that I was going to shut down my business in Detroit and move. But she was also thinking about switching careers. Or switching jobs. So she was going to move from Tanzania. She was looking at some jobs in Malawi, which is where we were at. So she resigned, and I kind of went home. I finished up all my commitments that I had left. But I had also I found a van for like 1,100 or $1,200, and I just put my bed in the back. I built out, put some lights in the top. I just took some of the furniture from my bedroom and put it into the back of the van. So she didn't have a job yet. She was just like applying for jobs. So we said, okay, we could live in this for 6 months. Yeah. And so we traveled around the US. She met all of my friends and family and closest friends. I was able to meet a lot of her family and her closest friends. It was like everyone thought we were crazy. It's like, you guys met in Tanzania, you knew each other for 5 days or 6 or 7 days, something like that, when you decided to like be life partners. And now you guys are traveling around in this van. And on the second day of van life, though, we found it wasn't going to be 6 months because she had gotten the position in Malawi. So we said, okay. So it was like 6 or 7 weeks that we lived in the van. It was amazing. I'd like to do it again, but whenever there's maybe another transition. Yeah, so that was kind of this is, I guess, the new. I don't even know if you call it an adventure anymore. It feels more like just life. But the big thing that we're doing now is actually we just bought a little bit of land here, and we're building a house. I'm building a music studio, video studio, and it's at the base of that mountain that you just saw. And yeah, we're starting a farm because in the last year I think all of us have become a little bit more aware of climate change, and I've been thinking a lot more about what I'm consuming. And I have the luxury here that I'm buying a lot of things without plastic, like being able to go to a spice shop and be able to buy all my beans or my rice, all my spices. And yeah, so we started thinking about, well, what's the next natural step? And it was like, well, what if we grew our own food? And that's kind of the direction we're going in. And I'm thinking that also that's a pretty good for like in terms of like making films is like if we're gonna have a farm, I'm gonna be learning a lot. I've been learning a lot about farming this year, going into farming, but like I don't want to lose like the idea, like the video aspect. Like there's a lot to share here. Like what can we learn about growing our own food, and how can that affect maybe give our friends the information or skills that they need to maybe live a little bit more sustainably.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like art, has either, been woven through all of this or, has gotten you to, the next step, whether it's, taking the video out to Tanzania or, trying to make a video across the United States. How do you see the stuff that you learned at Grand Valley as, how did prepare you or, are there things that you wish you had known at Grand Valley?
Well, I guess the first thing would be in the same way that Latin America, like that backpacking trip there really kind of expanded my worldview. I would say the same thing happened at Grand Valley, especially in those first couple of years, really made me challenge some of the things that I thought I knew as like the big mature 18-year-old that I was. After that, yeah, I'm really thankful for a lot of the classes. The class that most takes me like reminds me of like still like I still hear Kim Roberts' voice in my head from film video art because I just remember at the beginning, she's like, "You just have to learn something new this week and make a film." This is how I remember it, at least. Learn something new and make a film using that knowledge. I feel like that's still what I'm doing with like these beat videos that I'm doing every week, and I just remember so appreciating the structure of that, but also the freedom of it. And I think that was everyone maybe has a little bit of a different recipe to get the creative juices flowing, but I noticed at that time that was really effective for me, and I still try to kind of recreate that scenario in my head.
Yeah, sure sounds like you're learning new stuff, just about every day out there, huh? Do you have
Yeah.
any, like, collaborators that you're working with? So you said you're, like, building a music studio. Your website is, of course, up there if people wanna see, some of the work you've done.
Mhm.
Who are you collaborating with out there? And, is it just gonna be you in the studio or other people, or what is the music scene like in Malawi?
Yeah, I mean, the longer I'm here, I mean, as a foreigner, like it takes some time for people to trust you because there's, a lot of foreigners, they come in, they leave really quick, and maybe they're just like extracting, especially with a camera, right? They're extracting little images. And there's a huge culture here of like, don't let a white person take a picture of you because they're going to go back to America and tell everyone they're going to feed this child.
Mm.
And but you'll never receive that food, right? It's going to go to someone else. So,
Oh,
it's really about building community first and as I have a community here of friends and people who are essentially family to me.
Mhm.
I've been pulling them into the videos, and in even more now than ever, people are knocking at the gate and being like, "Let's collaborate." And so that's been really excited. Like I have a lot of things that are coming up, but you can only film so fast. You can only, especially since it's just like a one-man crew. I did just have a neighbor who moved here from the UK who is a audio engineer, and he also does film stuff. So I'm hoping he can help me because there's so many talented musicians and artists here that just don't have access to cameras, microphones, and anything. And so there's like a huge need for people who have some technical equipment, technical skills to like capture that and help them share what they're good at. So yeah, it's something that I feel like I'm just starting to do in the last like 6 months. I've just got to that like level of trust with like a certain community, and now that people see it, it's kind of like starting to roll forward. And like doing karaoke in the community, I'm the first karaoke DJ in town, so like like people start to know you from just like doing other things like karaoke DJ. People come up, they sing. I've heard some amazing singers. I'm like, we got to get you on a track. So yeah, it's been really great. And just also people who aren't artists, just neighbors, they come over and I'll ask them to like sing something, or like if you had to write a song, what would it be about? And like there's some things like that coming up as well.
Yeah, really given that platform. That sounds like just what a great life. Do you have any words you want to say to current students, or something that you wish? I mean, obviously now you've traveled many many miles. You've had a lot of experiences that like I said, most people won't even be able to experience or read about. What would you have told your college self?
No, this is very just like finance based, but I would say that editing was I just felt like there's always editing work. People always like, oh, and obviously not a lot of it's not glamorous. It's just like, oh, we shot all this terrible footage. Now we need someone to go through, you know, 10 hours of terrible footage and put together a 5-minute video. But I just feel like there's always editing work if you are putting yourself out there and editing things. And when I went freelance, I enjoy pretty much all aspects of filmmaking, but editing was what I chose just because I was trying to play it safe and it made me feel a little bit more comfortable. Like, oh, I think I'll be able to pay the rent with this. And yeah, I think that's true. I think that there's a lot of things that need to be edited out there, and I think that it felt like job security going into editing for me.
Yeah, well, and certainly.
The other thing I just say is After Effects. After Effects is just the playground, every day's playground. I love After Effects so much, and it's getting slow right now. I don't know if you were in After Effects, but some of the more recent updates are slow. But I just can't leave it because it's such a wonderful playground.
Well, I'm really glad that you've been able to, dig deep inside and, really discover some of this inspiration for your art. I, really love watching your journey out there. And I'm glad we got to share some of this with people out there. So keep up the great work, and, maybe we'll come see you in Malawi someday.
Thanks, Randy. It's been nice to catch up.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to me.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Alumni Live, the podcast. Subscribe to our podcast to hear more from our alumni across the industry. Check out Alumni Live on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube for more conversations and networking. Let us know what topics you want to hear our alumni talk about. The Grand Valley State University Film Video Alumni Network is here for you, and we're glad that you're here. Thank you for listening.